John, would you do me a favor and cue up the audio of the Attorney General? He's talking with NBC News about everything involved in this Horowitz report. Go ahead and cue that.
Mr. Attorney General, why do you say that the FBI opened the investigation of the Trump campaign on the thinnest of suspicions?
Well, I'm glad to get into the issue of predication, but let me just start out by saying that I think you have to put this in context. I think the heart of the IG's report really focused on how the investigation was conducted once it got going, and that is especially the very serious abuses of FISA that occurred, much of which has been, in my view, not accurately reported by the press over the last day. But in one area, I do disagree with the IG, and that was whether there was sufficient predication to open a full-blown counterintelligence investigation, specifically using the techniques that they did to collect intelligence about the Trump campaign.
Well, as a policy matter, why not open an investigation on a thin pretext? I guess on the one hand, you could say it's a presidential campaign, it's very sensitive, you need better evidence. On the other hand, you could say it's a presidential campaign. We have to be very careful. There could be a threat to our political process.
Well, I think probably from a civil liberties standpoint, the greatest danger to our free system is that the incumbent government use the apparatus of the state, principally the law enforcement agencies and the intelligence agencies, both to spy on political opponents, but also to use them in a way that could affect the outcome of the election. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time in history that this has been done to a presidential campaign, the use of these counterintelligence techniques against a presidential campaign. And we have to remember that in today's world, presidential campaigns are frequently in contact with foreign persons. And indeed, in most campaigns, there are signs of illegal foreign money coming in. And we don't automatically assume that the campaigns are nefarious and traitors and acting in league with foreign powers. There has to be some basis before we use these very potent powers in our core First Amendment activity. And here, I felt this was very flimsy. Basically, I think the department has a rule of reason, which is at the end of the day, is what you're relying on sufficiently powerful to justify the techniques you're using? And the question there is, how strong is the evidence? How sensitive is the activity you're looking at? And what are the alternatives? And I think when you step back here and say, what was this all based on? It's not sufficient. Remember, there was and never has been any evidence of collusion, and yet this campaign and the president's administration has been dominated by this investigation into what turns out to be completely baseless.
So there you go. There's the Attorney General. He's kind of laying it out. He went into greater details in other portions of the interview, kind of laying out what his problems were and thinly, based. But as we have to point out, Horowitz's report showed 17 times that the FBI either withheld exculpatory information, violated procedure, or made serious and egregious errors. So you start looking at the law and what has to be applied when you go into a FISA court to make a request. It is clear that the FBI violated that law. Now, the question has always been, did the FBI do this intentionally, or did the FBI, were they deceived by Fusion GPS and this dossier and then did it unwittingly? We know for a fact now, since the FBI knew January 2017 that the dossier was garbage, we know beyond the shadow of a doubt, with all of the evidence that's been presented, we know that the FBI knew that the dossier was not credible, and yet that was the primary reason they went into the FISA court and got those warrants. And they left out intentionally exculpatory information. They left out information that Carter Page had worked with the government to capture spies in the past and that he was not a Russian asset. They left all of that out to deceive the FISA court into this case being more credible than it really was. That's what the Attorney General is talking about. And that's where Durham says, oh boy, wait till you get a load of my report. Because he's already gotten one person to be indicted here, and he is going to continue to bring more and more people, I think. Now, the question is, how bad is it going to get? Will the big actors really get nabbed in this thing? And a lot of you, understandably, don't have a ton of faith in that. Tim, welcome to the program. Good afternoon.
Yeah, I was wondering about Senator Graham and Mitch McConnell. Are they going to squash a trial in the Senate and just throw out the impeachment, or are they going to bring in some witnesses and kind of give us a little?
I'm not exactly sure of their strategy yet, but what I am hearing is that they're not going to kill it on arrival, that they are going to use it as an opportunity to go ahead and call witnesses and expose some of the stuff that happened in the House side of things, which is why the House is saying that Schiff is not going to testify, which makes no sense. He should be the first witness anyway. But yeah, we'll have to see ultimately what that strategy is if it gets to that point. It still has to get to that point, and it hasn't yet. So when it gets there, they'll devise their strategy on how this is going to go. But regardless, the president's not going to be impeached. It's not going to happen. So, all right, I got to roll. Tim, appreciate the call. Thank you very much. We got more coming up. News Talk 95.3.